Oh, well, hello. Thanks for being here. Father Bob Horahan coming to you from the Co-Cathedral of St. John the Evangelist, and it's a delight to be able to join you once again and to share some thoughts and ideas on various questions that have come my way. We're continuing the theme from the last video. If you remember from that one, I had addressed a few questions that we had asked the faithful to provide, and I'm going to continue that today. So, picking up where we left off, or actually, to be more precise, backtracking ever so slightly, I want to return to one question that I already answered. And it was the question of, what is your favorite Bible verse? And I believe I said that, I have several. The one that I mentioned in particular was Galatians 2:20. But I also want to add another two that I think are very profound and that have spoken to me throughout the years. One is Jeremiah chapter 12, verse 1. And in that particular verse, Jeremiah speaks to the Lord and says, Lord, if I should dispute with you, you would be in the right, but still, I must lay out the case against you. I love the but still in between the two clauses there. Because Jeremiah is acknowledging, yes, that God is God, that God is the one who has control and who knows what he is doing and who is going to win any argument that you have with him. But still, Jeremiah has to unpack what's in his heart, what's churning, what's swirling within him. And so he just lays it out. And I think there's a beautiful invitation there in the example of Jeremiah to follow his example, to come to the Lord with whatever might be in our hearts, in our life of prayer. Not to censor ourselves. Sometimes I think we can fall prey to that, but simply to give everything to the Lord, recognizing that, yes, absolutely, he's God and we're not. At the same time, if we ignore what's in us, we also lose a glorious opportunity to let the Lord bring healing and transformation to that. The other verse that I like to mention is Hosea 14, chapter 3. If you need a little mnemonic to remember that, think 1 minus 4 is negative 3. Maybe that'll work for you. It works for me. And if it doesn't, okay, that's fine too. So, Hosea 14:3. The prophet encourages us to go to the Lord and say, forgive all iniquity, receive what is good. Two little sentiments that I think are so profound. To ask God to forgive our sins, to receive what we've done well. I think there can be a very strong tendency in many of us, certainly in myself, to second guess, to look back on the day and think, well, I didn't do that very well. Oh, I could have handled that situation better. There's a certain place for that, but all too easily that can become almost paralyzing. And so Hosea is giving us the opportunity to take all of that second guessing and to submit it to the Lord and just say, okay, whatever sin was in my day, whatever iniquity, whatever fault I might have perpetrated, so be it. I take ownership for it. But Lord, forgive that. And also, Lord, receive all that is good, all that together we've been able to accomplish throughout this day, all that you have been able to do through me and through my cooperation with you. So it's a splendid, splendid verse in that it just invites us into very simple but profound dispositions before our God. All right, it's probably time to address the elephant or the Spider-Man, or the Spider-Man because of the pillow, that are in the room. One of the questions I got asked was, what do you like to do in your free time? And a related question was also, what do you read for personal leisure reading? And what I read are Marvel comics and other things as well. But one of my hobbies, one of the things that I do like to do in my spare time is reading comic books. It's a hobby that I've been practicing since literally as long as I can remember. And I want to emphasize this. I did not jump on the bandwagon just when Marvel became such a massive cinematic phenomenon. I remember, in fact, very vividly experiences of going to visit my grandmother with my mom. And my grandmother lived in Caledonia, down in the southeast corner of Minnesota. Some of you might know where that's at. And usually, when we visited her, we would also stop at Rice's Pharmacy, Rice's drugstore. And in those days, drugstores had just a little bit of everything, frankly, including comic books, just a handful. But Mom would always, allow me to pick one out and then graciously buy one for me. Little did she know that she was starting a hobby that would last her son into his almost 50s, frankly. And so, yes, I do continue to do that. And I think there's something very fun and enjoyable about delving into that sort of fantastical world of superheroes and superpowers. But also, by virtue of getting sort of out of ourselves and entering into that unique world, it also gives us the opportunity to gain powerful insights into our own world. As we look at, for example, Spider-Man and his deep-seated sense of responsibility. So we see that in those exploits that he undertakes, there's always a sense of heroism, a sense of goodness, a sense of justice, a sense of right and wrong and how to live accordingly. And so I think, again, there's something very profound. It's very fun to be sure, but also very, very profound if we're looking for it in those sort of pop culture opportunities and tools that can allow us great insights into ourselves. So another question was also, what are specific texts that you have found spiritually nourishing, personally enriching? And I've got two of them with me. The first one that I want to comment on, simply because it's the first one that I read of these two, is Augustine's Confessions. I read this one sometime, I think, between my sophomore and junior year of college. I know it was a summer of my college years when I was in college seminary at Immaculate Heart of Mary Seminary. And in probing this text, I really gained an appreciation for Augustine's willingness to probe deeply into himself. It's a willingness and openness that we see in Augustine to really dig deep, to go to the depths within himself, and there to find an opportunity for God to transform him and to heal him. That's really something that I found so enriching about looking at this. And this particular text does have various notes that I have taken, some underlining, brilliant insights that I'm sure I would have had at that time in my life. But above all, I just saw how deep thought and how, again, going deep, if we want to use that phrase, can be so valuable for meeting the Lord. It's not unlike the Bible verse from Jeremiah that I spoke about just a few moments ago. The verse in which Jeremiah says, "This is what's in me." And in saying that to the Lord, gives God an opportunity to enter in. So too, Augustine, as he digs deep and notices what is in him, encounters the Lord and meets the Lord transforming him. Another text, and this one actually would have been written prior to Augustine's time, but that I read after I read the Confessions, was the Nicomachean Ethics of Aristotle. And if any seminarians are watching this, you're rolling your eyes, because you know how often I reference this. This volume, too, has all sorts of markings in it of various types. Again, there's underlining, there's handwritten notes, there's various symbols, and there's various colors. I've got green, I've got pencil, I've got black, because I've looked at it in so many contexts and in various situations. And I've appreciated the Nicomachean Ethics, especially for the insight that it provides in what it means to be truly human and what it means to be a virtuous person. Not that I necessarily always follow the insights of Aristotle as well as I could, but I see the value of them and the importance of striving for that height of virtue that he lays out in such beautiful ways and with beautiful insights. I wouldn't necessarily say beautiful articulation. Aristotle's very difficult to read, but the insights are definitely very, very worth it. A few other questions that also came my way. One, do you memorize your homilies? I actually don't memorize them as such. I don't produce a text and then commit that text to memory. I will oftentimes produce sort of a draft text and then maybe go from there to an outline and fix the outline in memory so that I can get from one point to another and not lose myself too much. Sometimes that might have happened. You might have noticed that in my preaching, hopefully not excessively. But eventually I like to think I get back to the next point in the outline and eventually can wrap it up. And the last one that I want to tackle for today is, what do you think about the construction project? For those of you who might be joining us from outside either St. John's or the wider Rochester community, because certainly all of those in either of those communities are very well aware of the construction that's going on, I want to just point out that Mayo is currently engaged in a massive building project that literally surrounds St. John's. And so we're witnessing this project just come to fruition in our midst as each passing day goes by. So what do I think about it? My initial reaction is actually just kind of fascination. It's almost kind of looking from a distance and just trying to wrap my head around this project, around how it was conceived, around how it was designed, how it's being executed. The levels of human ingenuity that are involved in putting this together and bringing it to fruition truly are fascinating to behold. But also from fascination springs excitement, because I do see what it means for St. John's to continue to really be a partner in this Rochester community with Mayo, and also what it means for the Rochester community and even really the global community. Because as we know, Mayo serves the global human family. It's not just folks from Rochester who go there. And so to be able to invest, to put together something that will be able to further healing and the well-being of the global human condition is something tremendously exciting and profound to be part of and to be watching. I also find that there's some very, very valuable spiritual insights that can be gleaned from almost any construction project, frankly, and I've been involved in a few, but certainly one that is as massive and as substantial as this. For one thing, as I mentioned earlier, there's such ingenuity that's involved. Human beings have come together with their fallible, limited, finite resources, conceived a plan, and are constructing something that is going to be magnificent. Now, what happens then when we as human beings, again with our fallible, limited, finite resources, allow God to be a partner with us in constructing the kingdom, or rather, when we allow ourselves to be partners with Him in building up the kingdom? What can He, through our cooperation, accomplish? That's a marvelous thing to ponder. Also, though, on the way to building up the kingdom in its final form, there might be some messiness. So yes, the construction project that's currently unfolding, yeah, there's inconvenience, there's awkwardness, there's messiness. There might even be setbacks. There might even be delays, part of the process. So too, in our own work of collaborating with God in building up the kingdom, in our own work of building a life of holiness by responding to His grace, there are moments that are going to be messy. There are moments that are going to be setbacks, at least as far as we can perceive, what we perceive as setbacks. And yet, the Lord is in the midst of it all. And I want to close those the comments about the construction metaphor with another Bible verse. This one comes from the 6th chapter of John's Gospel. And it's after the event of the multiplication of the loaves. Jesus gives a very direct instruction to the disciples after everyone has eaten. He says, gather up the fragments so that nothing will be wasted. Nothing is ever wasted if we allow ourselves to cooperate with the Lord's grace and goodness. If we take everything to Him, we say, receive, we say, forgive all iniquity, receive what is good. If we have the courage to go deep within ourselves and surrender ourselves entirely to Him, as Jeremiah does, as Augustine does, if we allow Him to inform our human intellect to know what it means to be human and to practice virtue and to put into effect those various insights that Aristotle has taught us. Yes, again, there will be messiness, but there will also be moments of great joy and clear progress, and none of it is wasted as we collaborate with the Lord in building up his kingdom and allowing his plan to come to fruition in our midst.